Hello. I've prepared this particular slideshow for a review of some aspects of writing and sentence structure and grammar that I found to be a problem for students last semester, the first time I had taught ORGL 2050 in a couple of years. So I think this will help you just in knowing what I'm looking for and to avoid some problems that might come up. The first thing that's important is for you to recognize fragments, compound sentences, and complex sentences. And the reason the compound and the complex sentences are important for our purposes is not because this is a grammar class so much, but so that you can punctuate them correctly. Now, you should be very familiar with what a fragment is. And most of the time, if you're using Word, or especially if you're able to use Grammarly software, that is available at many of the colleges, and if you don't know about it, you might want to ask at your institution. They will catch the fragments. And of course, a fragment means that the sentence has no clear subject or verb, and also that it does not have independence in the sense that it's only part of a sentence. It might seem to have a clear subject or verb, but it doesn't stand alone. And you can't be confused by the length of a sentence. A long sentence may still be a fragment. A short sentence may not be. So length is really not an issue. So I've given you 3 examples here, and of course there could be millions of them, but I just use these. Because February has 29 days this year. Now you might look at that and say, well, it has a subject, February, and it has a verb, has, but it doesn't have independence because of the word because at the beginning. And that is a word that indicates that it is a dependent clause and not an independent clause. So look out for that. Then you have the word entering the office without typing the ID into the pad. Has part of a verb, but it doesn't have a subject. Now the next is rather long, but it's still a fragment. John Williams Sr., who is the father of John Williams Jr., the CEO of Acme Products and a former Navy veteran. Okay, the who takes away the independence of that. So while it looks like it might have a subject and a verb, it really doesn't. So that's the first thing. Be very careful about fragments. And I've thrown in a few cartoons in here and memes just to make this interesting. The second type of sentence that you need to know about is a compound sentence, and that's when there are 2 independent clauses or simple sentences separated either by commas and coordinating conjunctions or by a semicolon. And so I have some examples here, and I tried to use kind of the same sentences in different versions to make that clear for you. Students should not write fragments in this class, and this behavior should carry over into the workplace. All right, that is an example of a compound sentence. There are 2 simple sentences combined with the word and that has a comma there. So comma and between them. Megan graduated from the University of West Georgia. There's a semicolon. The word however, which has a fancy word, it's called a conjunctive adverb, but that's not important here. However, she had dreamed of attending Harvard. That second part, she had dreamed of attending Harvard, is another simple sentence. So we've separated it this way. And so you can see the 2 other examples I've given, and just for more clarification. So of course you can stop this video at any point. I don't want to belabor things too long, but you can look at them and read them. When we get into compound sentences, this is where we come to the 2 major errors that you have with compound sentences, which are comma splices and run-ons. And I'm not going to read these to you. You can stop the video at this point and just look at them. But I've given examples using similar sentences of what a comma splice would be and what a run-on would be, and then how you would correct them. And I find usually that students, they understand the concept, but what they have trouble with is just seeing it. So, and that's a proofreading issue. when it comes to proofreading, you want to, there's a couple of ways to do it. One is to read your material out loud. The other is to read sentence by sentence backwards, not word by word backwards, but sentence by sentence, because you'll notice things. And another is, and this may be controversial, it's okay if you let someone else look at it. Now, I'm not saying they're writing it. I'm not saying they're correcting it. I'm saying let someone else look at it and get their opinion. Someone that you know you can trust who gets good grades in English. That's not foolproof, but it can be helpful. And a lot of you have tutoring centers and writing centers at your colleges, and also GoView has a tutoring function as well. So you can, through eMajor, so you can use that. So here's another example. I've gotten, yesterday I was spending some time getting things off the internet, as you can tell. The third type of sentence is a complex sentence, and this is one where there's at least one dependent clause combined with an independent clause. And you can have sometimes two dependent clauses, you can have two independent clauses, but that gets just more complicated. And I wouldn't recommend very much of that in your writing because it tends to be too complicated for people to read. So these are some examples of sentences that start with dependent clauses, excuse me, but you can also have the dependent clause at the end of the sentence, as the third example shows. And then notice the placement of commas so that you don't get that wrong, because the commas are necessary in this case to help for the reading. It tells the reader when to stop the thought of that you're trying to make sense of. Okay, so at this point, you might want to go back and review. Just be sure that you understand the comma splice and run-on issue. And of course, there are a lot of websites you can go to look for more examples if you need that. Second thing I wanted to talk about was sentence logic, and this has to do with mostly dangling or misplaced modifiers and something called faulty predication. And the only way to really teach these is by examples. So the principle for misplaced modifiers is that in English we put the descriptive word, the modifier, which might be a word, it might be a phrase, it might be several words, it might be a prepositional phrase, it might be a relative clause, which is a who or that clause. You put it as close as you can to what's being modified. So in the first sentence, only is the modifier. I only want a hamburger for lunch versus I want only a hamburger for lunch. Now that might seem that you're saying the same thing, but you're really not. So think about it. Only want is different from want only a hamburger. It does make a difference. So you want to put that modifier as close as possible to what it modifies. Prepositional phrases are also modifiers, and I've got some examples here that are you can look at. And again, you can stop the video and look at it. But prepositional phrases, of course, are things like from a man in the Walmart parking lot with a fluffy tail. Those are prepositional phrases. And then, since we all love puppies and kittens, I give you an example here of how the prepositional phrase on the way to the store, which are actually two prepositional phrases, needs to be moved, because in the first one it sounds like the puppy and the kitten were on the way to the store. And no, that's not the way it was. The person who was on the way to the store was she. So it makes more sense to say on the way to the store, she saw a puppy and a kitten. Here's another example that moves us into our next type. Spitting out hot lava, my friend took photos as the volcano erupted. The way that reads is that the friend was spitting out hot lava. It's not what you want to say. How would you change that so that spitting out hot lava is where it's supposed to be? That's the question. Which brings us to the use of ing phrases, especially at the beginning of sentences. This is what's mostly called a dangling participle. Again, not that important. It's a type of dangling modifier or misplaced modifier. But look at these sentences and their corrections and see why the corrections are much clearer in the sense of what's being said. Remember, the modifier should go as close as possible. That means right next to the noun or the pronoun that it's modifying. Now, I'll be the first to admit that dangling or misplaced modifiers are hard. So I've given you some links there that you can go to. You can just Google for links about understanding misplaced modifiers. Sometimes they're funny because they don't make sense. Sometimes they are just crazy. And to be honest, even someone like me who writes for a living, I will occasionally look at something I've written and go, oh my word, that is the worst misplaced modifier it could be. So you do have to be careful for them. Faulty predication is, again, a type of sentence logic, and the only way really to teach this, I have found, is through lots of examples. So I've given several examples here on these two slides. But the principle is that faulty predication, predicate is the part of the sentence that includes the verb and what comes after it. And it basically means that the front of the sentence doesn't match the end of the sentence, the predicate. And so we have an example: the purpose of movies was invented to entertain people. Well, no, movies were invented to entertain people. Okay, the purpose wasn't invented. So there's some examples there you can look at. Again, you can stop the video. And here's some more. The reason for low sales is because prices are too high. No, one problem is that's wordy unnecessarily, and you can just say sales are low because prices are too high. That gets to the point, and it doesn't have the reason is because. That's not good writing. That's sort of awkward. The temperature of water boils at 212 degrees. No, the temperature doesn't boil, the water boils. So you can look at those. And one reason for the examples is that you're going to have a quiz on this, and I try to make my quiz questions match the examples. A few grammatical matters. We've talked now about the sentence structure, and this is just some basic grammatical things. Verbs, they need to agree in number, and sometimes the presence of words between the subject and verb can confuse you. The box of pencils is on the table. Now, a lot of times people would say the box of pencils are on the table because they're thinking that pencils are on the table, but that is incorrect because the subject is box and not pencils. So it's box is, not pencils is. Pencils are. Mary, accompanied by her parents, is visiting the campus. Now, accompanied by her parents is not part of the subject, really. Mary is the subject. So that's just kind of a thrown-in descriptor that might confuse you. So that you'd say Mary, accompanied by her parents, are visiting the campus, and that's would be incorrect. And of course, we have tense verbs, and a lot of people in our everyday talk, we make the common mistake of using the past participle for the past tense. John came yesterday. He has come every day. Some people might say, John come yesterday. He did it well. He has done it well, not he done it well. And she saw the movie. She has seen the movie, not she's seen it, etc. And again, a cartoon. And of course, adverbs and adjectives, being careful about that. She wrote a good paper. She wrote the paper well. There's a difference between the adjective form of a word as and the adverb form. The test is quick. The test was administered quickly. There's a difference there. So these are just some basic things to look out for. All right, finally, I'm going to wrap this up in the next couple of minutes. I know you've been very good to listen to this. If your college gives you access to Grammarly software, use that. You can ask your Dean of Students office or maybe the Writing Center. Be sure to attend to any marks that Microsoft Word puts on your documents. Typically, red underlined words are for misspelled words or words that it doesn't recognize. Now, that could be a proper name that's spelled differently, but you still want to look at that. And then green underline are for grammatical, punctuation, and usage errors. So if it puts that there, you need to check it. I mean, if I get a document from you and I pull it up in Word and it has red marks and green marks, I know you haven't really done your due diligence here. I use track changes for comments and corrections on documents. Now, I will not, if your paper doesn't have any problems, I will not return it with track changes. There won't be any reason to do that. And I don't get super, super picky because this is not a class in editing. So there might be some things I would overlook that are questionable. I don't believe in editing students' papers and their voice because you write the way you write. But I will correct things if there are some definite problems. One of the definite problems people have is being wordy, and they feel that they have to write something that's 200 words, but they don't have 200 words worth of material. And in that case, what I would encourage you to do is get more material or to use references to the text as part of your assignment, because that shows me that you've read the text. Now, I don't mean quoting big sections of it, but do refer to the text in the material there. So track changes, if you look in the introductory Start Here module of the class, there are 2 or 3 documents that are about track changes, and it'll show you how that works if you're unfamiliar with it. Hopefully you do know about track changes. It's a great tool, and it'll show you how to get rid of them as well. However, you can't use it on your phone. You have to use it on a computer with Word in it. Okay. Now, some other issues about your assignments. They need to be in Microsoft Word. I will not accept a PDF, an ODT, or Pages. I cannot edit or put marks or track changes on those. So I can only put them on Microsoft Word. So don't send me a PDF. I will reject it. And there's really no reason for you to save it and send it that way. No, it's not a problem. The only exception might be when we get to the end of the semester with your resume, but even then you can put it in PDF form later after I make some comments on it. All files should be uploads, no links to Google Docs or OneDrive. Okay, they should be uploads of Word documents. And because there are so many students in this class and there are so many assignments, it is really important that you keep your assignments labeled correctly. And I show you there, and I've put this information in other places, but there's the format and there's an example of it. So now that you've reviewed this information, there is a 10-question introductory grammar and sentence form quiz linked in the Start Here course part of the course. You can take it 3 times to earn the mastery level of 80%. The highest attempt will count, and you need to do that by January 17th, 11:30 p.m. And all of our due dates will be 11:30 p.m. because that's the last one that's available on the GoView way of setting up the classes. Attaining 80% will be worth 20 points. Now, that's not a huge amount, but it's a good review that everybody needs. I will deduct many points on writing assignments for these errors, so you don't want to have them, and you want to have credible writing. As far as where the points go, to be perfectly honest, they will be, I don't want to call them extra credit, but they will be helpful points. Let's just put it that way. All right, this has gone on longer than I wanted it to, and thank you for your patience. Good luck with the class, and have fun. It's some really good material. Bye-bye.